And welcome back, everybody, to Hands-On Apologetics. And, so we're going to talk about my brand new book, The Gospel Truth, How You Can Know What Christ Taught. Just came out. Could it really just be legend, myth, maybe folklore, that maybe gullible, uneducated people just bought into? Or is there reasons to believe that the Gospels are solid truth and correctly give us what Jesus taught and did? Well, in my book, I take the perspective of just trying to lead somebody, perhaps a non-believer, maybe someone who even thinks that maybe this is all just a hoax, and give them some interesting information, that slowly I want them to do these huhs, that's interesting. I wonder why that's so. Now, to start off with, I think the big problem with people who think the Gospels are fabrications and not truthful accounts, I think it's because they forgot that the Gospels are Jewish. I know that may sound pretty strange. You would think, the Gospels, they came from Judea by Jews. Yeah, wouldn't you automatically assume that they're Jewish? Well, it's funny. A lot of people don't take that into account because that's actually very, very important. The Jews and Jewish society is one of those societies that took the transmission of teachings very seriously. And in fact, it's not by accident that when God wished to become incarnate and to reveal himself to us definitively in Jesus Christ, that he would do so within the Jewish community that he formed and had guided and prepared. And the good reason for that is because that society actually had a mechanism by which it could pass on large amounts of information, lots of minutia, with pretty good deal of accuracy. And so what I want to do is, and I do this in the book, in this chapter, is I take a look at that mechanism, which I call the Rabbi-Disciple relationship. And I show basically how it works. What were the basic components for this relationship, how they passed on information? And then I go to the Gospels, and again, not looking at it as inspired writings or anything like that, but just looking at the Gospels and asking a very simple question. Did Jesus tap into this particular methodology? And if so, it would suggest that, we have a mechanism by which the Gospels relied on, and that mechanism's pretty trustworthy. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about this rabbi-disciple relationship. Now, the Jews, like I said, They had a body of teaching, especially the Pharisees. They held on to an oral law that they believed that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. And so this oral law, this body of legislation, was passed on orally from generation to generation. And although they had writings, you also had this body of unwritten tradition as well. And so you needed a method to pass on this tradition accurately. And so they somehow or other formed this rabbi-disciple relationship. So let's define terms, okay? First, the term rabbi. We're very familiar with the word rabbi. What is it? It basically means my teacher or my master. So a rabbi is the one who hands on the teachings that he received from his rabbi, and he passes it on to his students. Okay? Now, the students are known as disciples. Very straightforward, right? The disciples were not just, now this is interesting and it's very important because sometimes we can make caricatures of things. The rabbi-disciple relationship, the disciples weren't these empty pots that they dumped data in, just raw data, and they were required to spit out the raw data perfectly. Okay, that was not what this relationship was. The relationship between a rabbi and his disciples was not only to pass on teaching accurately, but to form them to become rabbis so that they in turn can make disciples. So it wasn't just passing on data. It was also forming them and informing them, training them to be able to not only teach accurately, but to engage the material in such a way that it becomes part of them. Okay, so there's a great deal of formation that goes on in the rabbi-disciple relationship. And within this relationship, there's various aspects that enable the disciple to accurately, engage the rabbi and become like the rabbi. So I want to go through some of these aspects, some of these highlights. And I think we can appropriate this to the things we know today. For example, one major motivation for knowing and memorizing and retaining and becoming part of a rabbi's teaching is the prestige of the rabbi himself. This is a little hard for us to understand in modern times because think about the people that are held up on high esteem, put on pedestals, if you will. It's not your parish priest, unfortunately. It should be, but it isn't. Or a bishop or what have you. The people society put on pedestals are entertainers, singers, maybe even politicians. I don't know. Maybe that's so that it's easier to aim rotten fruit at or something. But those are the people that are held in high prestige, right? But in the first century Judaism, the rabbi was actually kind of the superstar. He was a mover and shaker in society. And so if you have a prestigious rabbi, that's a very strong motivation to be a sponge and soak up everything you can about the person. Now, this part, I think we can relate, right? Because how many people, especially younger people, have a particular singer that they just go gaga over, right? Or a particular actor or actress, people that you put on pedestals, people you have posters, maybe, I don't know, all their movies, all their songs. You're thoroughly engaged as in part of fandom, right? And now think about it, you hold this person in high esteem, what would you do, if you were able to sit down with that person and have a discussion with them, or maybe they could train you to be a singer or an actor or whatever, right? You would soak it up. You would remember every syllable that was spoken because after all, this is the pinnacle, the person that highest prestige in your eyes. The same is true in the first century Judaism. A prestigious rabbi was like a superstar like that, and you would hang on every word that the rabbi had to say and teach, and every mannerism, and just like someone in fandom today who would absorb everything a rock star would have if you had a one-on-one meeting or you're with a group of people. And that's one of the working mechanisms of this rabbi-disciple relationship. Is the prestige of the rabbi. So, this isn't surprising. Disciples would try to seek out the most prestigious of all rabbis, right? It'd be like going to the best college. You want to put the applications out for the best education that you can get. The same thing's true with disciples. They would seek out prestigious rabbis, and they would honor them to an amazing degree. In fact, if you look at some rabbinic literature, they promote that honoring rabbi to the point where actually it almost dwarfs the Ten Commandments for honoring your father and mother, that you should actually honor the rabbi more than father and mother. That's how much rabbis were expected. So, in fact, I have a quote here. The rabbis required their pupils to the utmost reverence, surpassing the honor felt to parents. Let thine esteem for your friend border on your respect for thy teacher, and respect for your teacher on reverence for God. Another quote, respect for a teacher should exceed the respect for a father. For both father and son owe respect to a teacher. So the rabbi was to be held in the greatest respect, even higher esteem given to him than even a parent or a father. So that's one aspect. So you can see where if this is true and you're living in that culture, if you're sitting under a prestigious rabbi, you're going to want to absorb every syllable. And that brings up the second point. And by the way, I follow theologian Emanuel Schur in this. He did a definitive work looking at various aspects of this rabbi-disciple relationship. And one of the things that the rabbis used to promote memorization probably won't shock a lot of the older people here. It could shock the younger people, but it is repetition. Okay, rigorous repetition for memorization. The rabbis would repeat over and over again the same lesson in order to drill it into their students. So those who remember the Baltimore Catechism and your instruction in it, chances are, yeah, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The teacher was obliged to repeat his matter again and again with his pupils, and hence the rabbinic dictation to repeat means exactly the same as to teach. So think about that. So to teach would be the same thing as to repeat. And so repetition was part of this instruction, and we got a lot more to go. So stay tuned, folks. I hear the music coming up. We're going to talk more about this rabbi-disciple relationship and Jesus tapping into it right after this.